Hi, I'm Linnea Lose from Cincinnati, the First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati, and I am delighted to be here at Universalist Unitarian Church of Peoria to help you with your search for a new minister. I know there's a lot of anxiety because you've had a minister for 27 years. You haven't had to go through this search. I come from a church that had a minister for 16 years, so I know the anxiety. I know what it's like not to know what you have to do, and there are like 200 steps that you have to do. I know what it's like to worry that you might not find the perfect person. I also know what it's like for the congregation to come together and get to know itself and its culture and its beliefs and the rootedness of its spirituality and its history, and see how all this plays into the kind of minister who's going to, with you, lead into the future. So I talked to your congregation, talked to your board. This congregation is in great shape. I think you're going to really appeal to a lot of potential applicants. 27 years is unheard of for the stability, for the length, the tenure of a minister. You have a building that is beautiful and new. You have a mortgage payment that you don't have to pay anymore. You've had good leadership. You've got a strong, stable budget. You've got a lot of active volunteers. You're in a community that has a low cost of living, and that matters to ministers, no matter if they're young and they're raising children, or they've just gotten out of school and they've got debt to pay off, or they're getting ready, saving for retirement. You also have a community. Peoria has a really good variety and quality of life here. So I think you've got a lot going for you. The job is to get to know, for you, this congregation, to get to know itself so well that you can help your search committee know what the priorities are that they should look for. Find that person, bring them in, and the congregation as a whole makes the choice. So my background is I went through the search, and I think the most interesting thing between your church and my church, this was the first Universalist church in the Midwest, 1843. My church was the first Universalist, Unitarian church in the Midwest. You're the first Universalist, mine was the first Unitarian. We were 12 years before you. We've always been leaders of progressive thought. We've always been looked to by the community as a voice of open-mindedness. And so this search isn't just finding a minister for this congregation. You are finding spiritual leadership for your community of Peoria, in some cases the state of Illinois. And you're also, what you're about to do is likely to make history in the UUA denomination. And that's because the denomination has really embarked very seriously on transforming what a church is, looking at anti-racism, anti-oppression, multiculturalism. And that, I believe, is the future of churches. And I believe that because I know at First Cincinnati, we saw our membership leveling off. We saw our pledges leveling off. They weren't dropping, they were leveling. But we didn't have the increases that we needed to sustain. We had an older congregation, and we didn't have the youthfulness to provide the energy and the volunteers, nor the funding to keep us growing at the same pace we were used to. So we did a lot of research, and we did we checked out all the national studies on church attendance and growth. We studied probably 6 different denominations and what they were doing, and we decided the best one is Unitarian Universalism. It has the open-mindedness that this country needs. It's not locked into any creed. it's run by us, the members, who determine our own future. And so that's what you're about to do here. You're about to create the future for UUCP, for Peoria, and for UUA. It's a 2-year process. There's a lot of work to it. By and large, between March and October, you'll be gathering all this information about yourselves. You will come to know yourselves in new ways. It's sort of like dating somebody that really excites you. You're going to date yourselves and see all the different hues of the attitudes, the biases, the strengths, the weaknesses, the dreams, the disappointments. You're going to describe your culture. It's like a deep dive into your own autobiography. You're going to do that with, your board is already, and the interim search committee have already gathered a lot of data about the church, about it's called the congregational record. So it's the facts, it's the stats, it's the history. Then there's going to be what's called the congregational survey, and that is huge. And I can't overemphasize the importance of the congregation in getting involved in that congregational survey. It's a written survey. It can be as hard copy, it can be as online, but it's also going to involve a lot of interviews in order to craft the survey, and then a lot of analysis to understand what you're saying, what members are saying in that survey, their dreams, their disappointments, their characteristics. And then there will be another batch of meetings to look at any confusing, vague comments, contradictions that show up in that survey. And so by the end of this long process, you'll spend like a good solid 3 months getting to know yourselves. And you're going to turn over to your search committee 4, 6 priorities of what you're looking for. And that's what the search committee has to go on. Let's talk about the search committee. So your bylaws call for 7 members on the search committee. They can be anybody, as long as they're members. But what you're going to want to look for are people who have a broad understanding of the church. And maybe they've been board members and maybe they haven't. But they understand how this church runs. They understand the personalities. They understand the relationships and the dynamics of that. They understand the history. They understand the norms, the traditions. They have a universal understanding of this church. They also need to be people who understand consensus and how to make consensus work. That's different from collaboration. So there's not going to be votes that will be taken on each step that the search committee moves forward. It's going to be a consensus. It's going to be a joint feeling almost that this is the right direction to go in. So it's not going to be a 5-2 vote. You'll have 7 members on your search committee. It won't be a 5-2 or a 4-3 vote or a 7-0 vote. It's going to be all 7 people saying, I feel good about this. This is right for this church. We're going to move ahead. You'll also need people who have the time to do this. It takes a lot of time. There are weekly meetings, and then when it gets really busy during the interview period, there can be, in January, you can end up having 3 to 5 meetings a week. As far as the timeline goes, you'll spend March to about October gathering all this data, and anybody can help the search committee do that. That's public information. We're all in this together. You can help them gather data. There will also be probably a workshop looking at how we categorize the kinds of ministers that we think might work here or maybe never even thought about. Example, do you want a minister who has a disability? Would that bother you? How would you handle a minister in a wheelchair? You think that person could do the job? All the other issues are up there. You're going to look at gender identity, sexual orientation, age, education, class, money, race, interfaith work. You're going to look at all different kinds of ministers and decide which ones you think really match the character of this church. and which ones you might be stretched by in the future of this denomination or congregation. So you'll do all that information gathering up until about November, 1st of November. That all goes up. All that information goes on a UUA website. And starting the 1st of December, any minister in the country can look at that information. And by the way, it can be a Unitarian minister or a non-UU minister. Any minister is allowed to look at this information. If you're non-UU, you will work directly with the office in ministerial transitions. But otherwise, you have a password that's protected. You get online. You see every church that's out there and everything there is to know about them. Every detail is on that website about every church. So the ministers spend about a month. They spend December not only getting ready for your Christmas service, but also job hunting. First Tuesday in January, Peoria Ministerial Search will receive the names of all the ministers who are interested. The ministers have as much information as the church does. So your search committee has to begin to go through all that information. They look at every applicant, but what guides them is what you, the congregation, have said are the top priorities of what that search committee looks for. You're not going to put your search committee out there on their own. They're going to go out and represent you. So they're going to interview all these people. It's dozens of interviews. Most of them are online by video conference. Your search committee will whittle the list down to 3 or 4 what are called pre-candidates. That happens in February, and by March, they're usually coming in here secretly. So your search committee will meet with 3 to 4 viable pre-candidates, is what they call them, and you'll never know they were here. The reason for the secrecy is that these ministers have congregations that don't know the ministers are looking. Think what would have happened if you'd known Michael Brown was going to look a year or 2 before he was going to look. And it would have just completely stopped your momentum. There would have been a lot of mistrust, a lot of uncertainty. Ministers don't want to do that to the congregations, and you at Peoria shouldn't want to do that to their congregations either. So this is total secrecy. Nobody knows who is searching but the Ministerial Search Committee. Not even Reverend Dave Clements will know. He'll find out when these applicants call him to say, what's this church really like? What are their skeletons in the closet? But until then, he will not know who is applying. Only your Ministerial Search Committee will know, and they have to keep it secret. So members should expect a period of a blackout communications period in January, February, March. Your search committee will whittle it down to 1 candidate who will come in here sometime in April, maybe early May, for a 9-day period. So your congregation will have a chance to hear the minister preach on the first Sunday, meet the minister at dozens of events during the week, hear the minister preach the second Sunday, and then there will be a vote taken immediately after the service. So, what we're asking from you, what you have to do is to make sure this process works. UUA has refined it, but it has to be customized to your church. You have to give your all, and that requires a lot of personal self-reflection, church self-reflection, and risk-taking. You've done things very well here. This place runs like clockwork. And that's about to change because you're jumping into a swimming pool that you've never been swimming in before. So, 2 things. Every single member has to be deeply involved. You're going to be getting a call from it has to be deeply involved. Get involved in all the interviews, in the survey, in the Beyond Categorical Thinking workshop. If your search committee needs help finding information on the history or certain programs, step up, give them that information right away. That's for everybody to do. Your search committee is also going to talk to every single member in this congregation to ask, Who do you think would make a good search committee? I'm sorry, your board is going to talk to every member of this church, asking, who do you think would be a good member on that search committee? Who knows the church? What people do we trust? What members do we really trust? Who have the time and the dedication and the love for this church to carry this ball for us? If you want to sign up for the search committee, volunteer. If you don't want to sign up, think about good people that you want to represent you. And then get ready for a great ride. You've got a really good church. I think you're going to attract a lot of really good applicants. You're going to come to know yourself in new ways, and you're going to have a fresh new start. And I can assure you, from First Unitarian of Cincinnati, we thought we were a pretty darn good church, and we had a lot of applicants. And we have learned so much about ourselves in the search, and so much about how to take a whole fresh new look with a whole fresh new minister at what we're doing. And it's a thrilling congregation to be in, and I wish that for you. Call me if I can help.